The moment that shocked the internet. In January 2026, something happened that most people in Silicon Valley, in Hollywood, in traditional media, completely failed to understand. A young man from America, armed with nothing but a phone, a camera, and a live stream, walked into Africa, and Africa did not just welcome him. Africa turned him into a continental phenomenon. Streets shut down, crowds formed in minutes. Police escorts became necessary. Millions watched live as a single YouTuber triggered scenes that looked more like a political rally than a content creator's tour. His name, Darren Jason Watkins Jr. The world knows him as Ishospeed, but this story is not just about a YouTuber. This is the untold story of how a generation of African youth took control of global internet culture and forced the world to pay attention. Before the name, a kid in a bedroom, long before stadiums, long before police escorts, long before millions of viewers, there was just a kid sitting alone in a small bedroom in Cincinnati, Ohio. No manager, no brand deals, no industry connections, just a cheap webcam, a microphone, and a dream that most people around him did not take seriously. Darren was not born famous. He was not born rich. He was not born with a viral audience waiting for him. Like millions of teenagers around the world, he started on YouTube with hope and almost no one watching. Early streams would go live. 5 viewers, 10 viewers, sometimes less. He would talk, scream, react, and most of the time, the internet would ignore him. But something was different about Darren. He did not try to be perfect. He did not try to be calm. He did not try to act professional. Instead, he gave the internet something raw. He showed anger. He showed joy. He showed embarrassment. He showed pain. He showed real emotion. In a digital world full of filters and fake perfection, while other creators edited themselves to look flawless, Darren let the world see him exactly as he was. For a long time, that honesty looked like failure. Family members questioned him. Teachers didn't understand. Friends doubted whether YouTube was a real future. And quietly, in that small bedroom, a teenager made a decision. If the world was going to watch him, they were going to watch the real him. Viral fame and the price of being loud. Then, almost overnight, the internet changed everything.
Play it
a few
again.
clips went
that was
viral,
great.
then
So
more,
funny.
then millions. Reaction videos, meme pages, TikTok reposts, Twitter trends. The algorithm did what it does best. It took a loud, emotional teenager and turned him into a global personality. Fame did not arrive slowly. It exploded. One day, he was just another streamer. The next, his face was everywhere. But viral fame is not gentle. Viral fame does not give you time to grow. Every mistake becomes permanent. Every emotional outburst becomes a headline. Every bad decision becomes a clip that never disappears. Darren was not media trained. He was not coached on public relations. He was not protected from the internet's cruelty. He was growing up in front of millions of strangers. Some laughed with him, others laughed at him, and slowly, the pressure of being watched began to change his life. Privacy disappeared. Normal teenage life disappeared. Every move was judged. But while America debated his personality, while critics focused on his mistakes, something powerful was happening somewhere else. Across the Atlantic, on a different continent, in comment sections filled with flags, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Tanzania, Ethiopia, African fans were showing up in overwhelming numbers. They were not just watching, they were claiming him. Why Africa connected to speed? To understand why Africa connected to IshowSpeed, you have to understand African youth culture. The generation raised on smartphones, the generation fluent in memes, the generation that lives on WhatsApp, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. But more than technology, there is something deeper. African youth recognize energy. They recognize authenticity. They recognize someone who is not pretending to be perfect. Speed was loud, expressive, emotional. In many African cultures, expression is not weakness. It is strength. Where Western audiences sometimes saw chaos, African audiences saw honesty. Where critics saw immaturity, African youth saw someone who is real. Someone who is not afraid to be himself. Slowly, Africa did not just become part of Speed's audience. Africa became part of his identity. And eventually, Darren made a decision that would change internet history. He would not just shout out Africa from a screen. He would go there. The decision that changed everything. In late 2025, against advice, against caution, against fear, IshowSpeed announced something no major streamer had ever attempted at this scale. A raw, unfiltered, live-stream tour of Africa. Not one country, not two, but up to 20. No heavy scripting, No fully controlled environments. Just speed and the streets. Industry insiders were nervous. Security experts warned him. Friends told him it was risky. But Speed was not chasing safety. He was chasing connection. He was chasing the people who had carried him to global fame. And on December 29, 2025, he landed in Angola. Angola. The first shock. December 29, 2025. Angola. The plane touched down quietly. There were no red carpets, no global media trucks, no traditional celebrity welcome. At first, it looked like a normal arrival. Then the live stream went live, and something strange happened. Word spread, not through television, not through radio, not through newspapers. It spread the modern African way, through WhatsApp, through Telegram groups, through TikTok reposts, through street-to-street whispers. Speed is here, within minutes. People started running. Motorbikes followed cars. Teenagers chased convoys. Phones went up. Voices rose. Speed stepped out. And suddenly, the street was no longer a street. It became a moving rally. Hundreds turned into thousands. For the first time on African soil, Speed understood something terrifying and powerful. This tour was not going to be controllable. Africa was not waiting politely. Africa was claiming him. South Africa. When fame turned into force, South Africa was different. The cities were bigger, the crowds were faster, the response was louder. Here, Speed was not just recognized, he was hunted in excitement. Fans tracked his location, followed cars, blocked roads, rushed hotels. Security teams began to worry, because fame at this level is no longer entertainment. It becomes force, a human wave. One wrong move, one panic, one misunderstanding, and celebration can become danger. But Speed kept going, laughing, barking, screaming, feeding off the energy. In South Africa, the tour crossed a line. It was no longer experimental. It was now unstoppable. Mozambique. The internet meets the beach. Then came Mozambique, and the tone shifted. The chaos softened. The celebration became joyful. Beaches, music, dancing. Traditional performers ran into frame. Kids showed up moves. Crowds laughed instead of pushed. In Mozambique, Speed didn't just feel famous. He felt welcomed. This wasn't just a fan base. It felt like community. For a moment, the internet stopped being a screen. It became real life. Small kingdoms and big energy. Eswatini, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia. Smaller countries, smaller populations, but no smaller energy. In Botswana, safari landscapes mixed with screaming fans. Jungle views collided with live stream chats. In Zimbabwe and Zambia, kids performed karate. Traditional dancers took over the streams. Local leaders welcomed him. What started to happen was deeper than content. Speed was no longer just recording Africa. Africa was shaping Speed, teaching him rhythm, teaching him patience, teaching him humility. The tour was changing him. East Africa, where everything changed. Then, he arrived in East Africa, and the internet prepared for something no one fully understood yet. The day Africa took over the internet, Kenya did not welcome Speed. Kenya erupted for Speed. This was not a visit. This was a digital earthquake. Millions joined the live stream, then millions more. Phones froze, servers strained, social media platforms lit up, streets filled, police escorts became mandatory, roads blocked. Buildings crowded with fans leaning out of windows. At the peak, over 8 million people watched live, not highlights, not replays. Live. 93 billion impressions. In 3 days, a number so large, it stopped sounding real. In Kenya, Africa did something historic. It reminded the world that global internet culture does not belong to one country, not to Silicon Valley, not to Hollywood, but to the people. For African youth, this was representation. This was proof that they were not watching history. They were making it. After Kenya, the weight of a continent. After Kenya, something changed. The tour became heavier. The crowds became larger. The risks became clearer. Speed was no longer just visiting Africa. Africa was carrying him. With that love came responsibility and danger and pressure. The tour was now too big to fail. Morocco and AFCON. When football met the internet, football is not just a sport in Africa. Football is identity. Football is pride. Football is history. So when Speed arrived in Morocco, he was not just entering another country. He was entering a sacred space. The Africa Cup of Nations. The stadium was full. The air was heavy with chants. Millions were watching. And then, something unexpected happened. IShowSpeed walked out. Not as a fan, not as a guest, but as part of the spectacle. The African mascot. In that moment, internet culture and African football culture collided. A YouTuber standing inside one of Africa's greatest sporting traditions. It was symbolic, it was controversial, it was historic. It was proof that digital influence had officially entered African sporting history. Francis Ngannou, a viral moment seen around the world. Then came a moment that the internet would replay millions of times. UFC superstar Francis Ngannou, a playful skit, a friendly encounter, a moment that looked small but carried massive symbolism, a global African sports icon, and a global internet icon. Meeting, laughing, creating a viral memory. This was no longer just Speed visiting Africa. Africa was welcoming Speed into its global culture. Algeria, when celebration turned to fear, but every rise has a shadow. In Algeria, the tone changed. What started as excitement turned into chaos. Objects thrown, bottles flying, security shouting. Speed rushed away. Stream cut. For the first time, the world saw something uncomfortable. The danger of uncontrolled fame. The reality that massive crowds are not always safe crowds. In that moment, the tour stopped being just inspirational. It became risky. It became real. The weight of fame. What most fans never saw was the exhaustion, the stress, the constant calculations. Where to go, how to move, how to stay safe. Every city brought love, and every city brought risk. Bodyguards narrowly avoiding accidents. Vehicles squeezing through tight streets. One mistake away from tragedy. Fame at this level is not a blessing alone. It is a burden. Nigeria, the city that never sleeps. Then came Nigeria, Lagos, a city powered by noise, by hustle, by rhythm, by millions of lives moving at once. In Lagos, there is no such thing as quiet, and there is no such thing as small fame. Balogun market erupted, streets froze, phones rose, fans surrounded cars, shouting, laughing, singing, screaming his name. Lagos did not slow down for Speed. Lagos absorbed Speed, turned him into part of the chaos, part of the rhythm, part of the city. The birthday and the number. Then, on the streets of Lagos, on his 21st birthday, it happened. 50 million subscribers. Not in a studio, not at a YouTube headquarters, not on a Hollywood stage, but in traffic, standing on a car, holding a cake, surrounded by African fans. That moment was more than a milestone. It was a symbol that global success no longer belongs to one place, that the future of internet culture is not controlled by a single country, that Africa is not watching history. Africa is making it. What this tour really meant. This tour was not perfect. It was chaotic. It was risky. It was emotional. It was unpredictable. But it was real. It showed something the world often ignores. That African youth are not waiting to be included. They are building their own global influence. Speed did not bring fame to Africa. Africa revealed its power to the world. Through Speed. Legacy. The story beyond Speed. From a small bedroom in Ohio to millions of voices across a continent. This story is bigger than one YouTuber. It is the story of a generation. The generation that refused to stay invisible. The generation that used phones instead of microphones. Live streams instead of television. Comments instead of newspapers. The untold history is not just the rise of IShowSpeed. The untold history is how Africa reminded the world that the future of culture is already here. And it is loud. And it is young. And it is unstoppable. Like, subscribe, comment, and follow for more of the untold history of people that shock history, cause there is a lot to learn.